it's Celeste. Welcome to my booktube channel, A Reader's Almanac with Celeste, where we discuss all things bookish, crafty, and much, much more. Happy August! I was really excited last week to celebrate my first year booktube anniversary with you. And today I'm going to run down a nice big juicy pile of summer sizzling mysteries, which I like to refer to as detectives in heat. Who are these most intrepid, scintillating sleuths who battle heat, dusty deserts, outbacks and savannas, and knitting in high neck dresses at posh Caribbean resorts? Some of these mysteries and thrillers I've already read, and some have been recommended and I have not read them. So I'm asking you, let's throw this open in the comments below. Who are the best detectives to read in the throes of a sweltering summer August? Without further ado, let's find out. Here's Detectives in Heat. Okay, and as we go, I will be referring to my notes here because I do have quite a few to go through. The first one I wanted to talk to you about was The Unexpected Mrs Polifax. What a great book to read in the August heat. And this was actually my first Mrs Polifax mystery, and it's #1 in the series. So great, and it takes place in the month of August, so what could be better? This is the story of Mrs. Emily Pollifax. She is a woman whose children are grown and have moved away, and she lives alone. Her husband is deceased. She's in her 60s. She goes to have an annual physical, and the doctor tells her that she's in perfect physical health and really in good shape for a woman of her age. However, he notices that she's a bit depressed. So he suggests that she take a vacation, which she does, except as any self-respecting woman in her 60s would do, instead of going just on a vacation, as most of us would do, she goes to the CIA and applies to become a secret agent. Of course. Well, what a surprise when she turns out to be the perfect sleuth for a specific mission to Mexico City, and it takes place during the first week of August, and all she needs to do is show up at a bookstore called The Parrot in Mexico City on August 19th and ask for a copy of Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. As you can probably imagine, things don't turn out exactly the way they're supposed to, and it ends up being a really rollicking, fun, lighthearted adventure, although it does have its serious moments, and there's definitely danger, death, and weapons and spies and being kidnapped and all kinds of things happening. It introduces us to some of the other major players that we'll meet again later in the series, and it takes place in the 1960s, and it's during the Cold War. It's kind of like a combination of Get Smart and Jessica Fletcher. So think that. I know that it was made into a movie. It may even have been Angela Lansbury that took the role. I have not seen that. I've heard the movie is not very good. So I'm sticking to the books for now, but there's a number of adventures that Mrs. Polifax goes on, which do take place in the hot, sweltering heat of summer. And the first one, The Unexpected Mrs. Polifax, is a great place to begin. Next up on our list of detectives in heat, or sizzling summer mysteries, is the #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. I absolutely love the television adaptation of this starring Jill Scott. I think it's really hysterically funny and poignant and beautifully filmed, and the acting is great. It's a comedy drama, and it's available through Amazon Prime and probably some other outlets as well. There was only one season of it, which I found really disappointing. Why is it always that the series on TV that I love the best are the ones that stop after the first season? Who knows? Anyway, if you can, check that out because it's fantastic. And this is the book that it's based on. This is the first book in the series, and I'm going to read my notes for this one. So it's following the death of her father. Precious Ramotswe, the only lady private detective in Botswana, opens a small storefront agency in Gaborone at the foot of Kigali Hill in Botswana. She has a tiny white van, 2 desks, 2 chairs, a telephone, and an old typewriter. She brews red bush tea and listens to her neighbors' troubles, which could include a missing husband, a wayward daughter, a search for a con man, or a missing 11-year-old boy. So I really recommend giving this one a try, and also watch the series on TV. They're both great, and you really learned a lot about Botswana culture. Now, it is written by a white man, but I think it's really well done and worth a read. So next up is An Unsuitable Job for a Woman by P.D. James. I love these editions by Faber and Faber. And this is one of 2 mysteries which star Cordelia Gray, who is P.D. James' female detective. Cordelia Gray is quite a young woman. She's just started in detectoring. She did work for Bernie Pride of the Pride Agency, and there is a tie-in with Inspector Adam Dalgleish because apparently Adam Dalgleish sacked Bernie Pride, and then Bernie Pride opened up his own agency. And Cordelia Gray has learned most of what she knows from Bernie. When Bernie unexpectedly passes, she takes over the agency, and her first case involves solving the mystery of what happened to Mark Callender, who is a young Cambridge student, and he was found hanged under mysterious circumstances in a summer house cottage. And this one I did just finish. I enjoyed it. I love P.D. James, as you well know. However, I did find it a little bit dry, and the style was a little bit different than the Adam Dalgleish mysteries, which I cherish. I found it hard to get used to the slightly different pace, and also the fact that I don't know if she actually does this in the Dalgleish books, but P.D. James, the way this book was set up, one chapter just begins in the middle of a page right after another, which I don't like. I like having sort of a sense of finality for each chapter, and the chapters are quite long. This takes place in the summer as well, and it's good. I definitely think it would make a wonderful TV series, especially since they've redone all the Dalgleishes so well with Bertie Carville. I think they should really do the Cordelia Gray mysteries as well. I understand that they have done the Cordelia Gray mysteries in a few very early iterations back in, when was it? I think the 80s and 90s, but I think that would be a great one to redo now on the heels of the new Adam Dalgleish. So yeah, An Unsuitable Job for a Woman. You can't go wrong with P.D. James, but it wasn't quite my favorite, but it does take place in summer, so if you're a Cordelia Gray fan, this would be a great one to read. Next up is a book I'm in the middle of reading right now, and that is Mary Stewart's Madam, Will You Talk? And this is about a young woman called Charity Selborne who goes to visit Roman France in Provence with her friend Louise, and a mystery starts to unravel while she's investigating the old Roman aqueducts and ruins of Avignon and the surrounding environs. It involves the kidnapping of a young boy, and it's typical Mary Stewart, very evocative, very mysterious, very strange. It's the kind of story you could imagine as a movie that comes on at like 3 in the morning when you can't sleep and you turn turn the TV on and you're browsing, and this is just like some strange foreign film that comes on where there's a lot of drinking of aperitifs and smoking of cigarettes and so forth. So yeah, Madam, Will You Talk? It's let's see, it was published in 1955. It was Stewart's first published novel, and I absolutely love her dialogue and her descriptions of the summer heat. Now again, this takes place in the summertime, and she talks about the colors, the pale greens of the leaves dappled with yellow, and the sound of the cicadas, and the dry rustling of this and that, and the quality of sunlight on the white road, and the dust that rises. She's just so evocative and so descriptive. So it's really, really a neat one, and I highly recommend Madam, Will You Talk? The next book on my list is a classic by the author Raymond Chandler, and that is The High Window. Now, this has been on my TBR list actually since last March, when I did my very first original BookTube tag, March Movie Madness, and I still have not gotten to this, although I did watch the movie that was based on this book. It's a very old black and white, fun 1940s film, I believe it's 1940s, called The Brasher Doubloon, and you can find it for free right here on YouTube if you Google that or search for that. This is a story that takes place in Pasadena, California, and the really interesting quality about The High Window is the wind. It's set in the suburbs of Pasadena, and the house and the landscape really become a character in Chandler's novel. He describes the old house, he describes the old architecture of it, its secrets, its sort of whispering from within, its sense of cool in the heat, and a wind and breeze that keeps rustling through the trees and the leaves. And it's all about the search for a rare gold doubloon, which belonged to a woman's husband and was part of a coin collection and was stolen. The problem is that everybody who comes into contact with the doubloon ends up dying, and so Philip Marlowe is there to help solve the mystery and save the day. So I am still really looking forward to this. In fact, I think I would like to read all of Chandler. I'm not usually a hard-boiled detective fan, but his writing is so quintessential and classic that I really would like to be able to read at least several of his novels, including The High Window. Another book that I've picked up, and I think I may take it on my vacation with me, is Murder Takes a Holiday. And this is a collection of stories set at holiday resorts and locales, and it includes stories by Dorothy Sayers, Arthur Conan Doyle, Anthony Berkeley, Ruth Rendell, John Dixon Carr, Simon Brett, and more. And there's supposed to be some really good ones in here. It sort of reminds me in format of other Golden Age mysteries that you can find in the British Library Crime Classics series. This particular one is Country House Mysteries, and they have a whole number of titles in this collection. But it seems to be a sampling in this one as well of adventures that take place on warm sands, drinking a cool drink in the shade of a city square. And it says it's a murderously good collection of classic crime stories. Yeah, so an impossible murder on a Cornish beach, a honeymoon in the Italian lakes that becomes a desperate search for the truth, or an African safari that ends with the tables being turned. So looks intriguing, so I may put this in my purse and take it with me when I go on vacation in a few weeks. Have like an 8-hour car ride ahead of me as a passenger, so this might be a good one to dip into. And then, of course, you can't forget the summer mysteries of the Queen of Crime, Agatha Christie. I've mentioned this before, Midsummer Mysteries, so this gives you a little sampling of all of her detectives in various summery circumstances. I love these gold foiled editions in hardcover and from HarperCollins. So summertime, as the temperature rises, so does the potential for evil. From Cornwall to the French Riviera, whether against a backdrop of Delphic temples or English country houses, Agatha Christie's most famous characters solve even the most devilish of conundrums as the summer sun beats down. So another great one to take with you on a vacation or just in the month of August if it's hot where you are. So yeah. And you know, there are just so many great choices when it comes to Agatha Christie and sweltering summer heat, starting with Poirot. Even the very first one, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, I believe takes place in fair weather months at a country estate. And there's just so many. I particularly love these editions featuring Poirot from Collins Crime Club. So we have Murder in Mesopotamia, Death on the Nile, of course. Who could forget that? That's quintessential. And, what else is there? An Appointment with Death. Just lots of different examples of Poirot in the desert or in the Greek Isles, walking around in his pale linen suit, mopping his brow with his handkerchief and looking for a cool place in the shade as he solves a very heated mystery. And of course, when it comes to Miss Marple, who could forget a Caribbean mystery? This was one which I reviewed in my very first video on BookTube, and it remains one of my favorites. Although it has not aged well in terms of its dated racial depictions, it's really well written other than that, and you know, I think Agatha Christie was actually open to having changes and updates made to some of her novels so that they did not come across as racist, and sort of correcting and advancing the character of Miss Marple. It's a really good mystery, though, and I especially love the depiction as done by Joan Hickson for BBC, ITV, all that. So check this one out if you can. It also introduces the character of Jason Raphael, who we meet later again in another Miss Marple mystery called Nemesis. And then we also have her other detectives, including Superintendent Battle. This one is Towards Zero. This takes place in the summertime as well. So to the casual observer, apparently nothing is wrong, but when a house party gathers at Gull's Point, the seaside home of an elderly widow, earlier events come to a dramatic head. As Superintendent Battle discovers, it is all part of a carefully laid plan for murder. And then there are other titles like Evil Under the Sun, just so many. There's too many to mention, but if you're looking for sizzling summer mysteries and detectives in heat, of course you can turn to Agatha Christie. Now, a book that I have not read, but I've heard super great things about, is Tour de Force by Christiana Brand. I haven't read any of Christiana Brand's work, but she was a British crime writer. She wrote Tour de Force in 1955, and it features police detective Inspector Cockrell. According to the description for this novel, against his better judgment, Cockrell travels for a holiday on a Mediterranean island republic off the coast of Italy. When a murder is committed, he becomes the initial suspect and sets out to solve the crime himself. So I am really looking forward to putting Tour de Force by Christiana Brand on my TBR list. And speaking of Italy, another one that I'm interested in perusing is The Shape of Water by Andrea Camilleri. This is set in Sicily. And it says, Silvio Lupinello, a big shot in Vigata, is found dead in his car with his pants around his knees. The car happens to be parked in a part of town used by prostitutes and drug dealers, and as the news of his death spreads, the rumors begin. Enter Inspector Salvo Montalbano, Vigata's most respected detective. With his characteristic mix of humor, cynicism, compassion, and love of good food, Montalbano battles against the powerful and the corrupt who are determined to block his path to the real killer. So what I've heard about these mysteries is that Inspector Montalbano is a really brilliant sleuth who loves to cook and loves to eat. So you get a lot of Sicilian food writing intermingled with the mystery. So, and his description, I just started browsing the first page of this, and it sounds really sort of gangster and gritty. So it will be interesting to see how Andrea Camilleri matches that up with descriptions of loving food preparation and something which is nurturing and nourishing and cultural. So sounds like an interesting one. In that same vein, I'm also interested in reading several of the Maigrets novels by Georges Simenon, including My Friend Maigret. And this says, the palm trees around the railway station were motionless, fixed in the Saharan sun. It really felt as if they were stepping into another world, and they were embarrassed to be entering it in the dark clothes that had been suited to the rainy streets of Paris just the evening before. An officer from Scotland Yard is studying Maigret's methods when a call from an island off the Côte d'Azur sends the two men off to an isolated community to investigate its eccentric inhabitants. So that sounds cool. And then the other one, which seems sort of hot and steamy, is Maigrets Holiday. I'm not sure about that, though. I haven't read it yet. But I know that in this one, Inspector Maigret's wife has fallen ill, and she is kept in the hospital, and Maigret is kind of left to sort of bumble through his holiday on his own and doesn't know what to do with himself. And so while they're on their seaside holiday, he begins to investigate, I think it's the death of a young girl, but I haven't gotten that far yet, so we'll see. But that also sounds like an intriguing one. I absolutely love the Maigret series that was on TV, which featured Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson, and I thought his portrayal of Maigret was brilliant. I understand that there are some earlier portrayals of Maigret that people are very loyal to, so I'm looking forward to viewing those as well. But I just thought Rowan Atkinson did such a brilliant job, and that's another series which was not renewed. Why? Don't know why they do that, but in any event. So the whole reason that I want to start reading the Maigret novels is because of Rowan Atkinson. So thank you, Rowan Atkinson. And you know, we don't want to leave out our junior sleuths when we're talking about the detectives of summer. There are so many Nancy Drews and other girl sleuths that I could list for this challenge, but I think that for today I'm only going to list one. And so if you've never heard of Judy Bolton, you may want to give the Judy Bolton mysteries a try. These were written by Margaret Sutton between 1932 and 1967. Sorry, I'll try to turn that here because my ring light is shining on it. This is interesting. I think she was not as popular as Nancy Drew, but lots of readers and critics view Judy Bolton as more of a feminist than Nancy Drew, someone who is more likely to stand up for social justice. And her books also depict events, or are based on events which really happened. For example, this was based on the tragic bursting of the Austin Dam in 1911. And the thing that I find really cool is the author, Margaret Sutton, after her marriage, lived in several towns around New York State, which is where I live, and are based on real historical events that happened throughout New York State. So this is the very first one in the series. It's called The Vanishing Shadow. Look at just the gorgeous, gorgeous artwork in that. And that is with illustrations by Pelagie Doan. It's just beautiful, and these are reproduction volumes that were done by Applewood Books. I have looked at some old vintage copies of Judy Bolton, but it's been really hard to find those in good condition. And so if I can get a brand new volume, you know, with all of the titles in the series with the original artwork on the cover, I think it's a win-win. So yeah, Applewood Books. And so as this mystery opens, let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. It opens in the early afternoon on a very hot summer day. Judy Bolton is sitting under a beech tree, as you see here, and she's reading a book. And the days were intolerably long and monotonous in Dry Brook Hollow. And then she starts to hear some workmen who are working on a nearby dam talking, and it comes down to her to try to convince people to get out of the area because the dam is supposedly going to break and they don't know exactly when. So it's a race against the clock to somehow follow some clues and solve a mystery before the dam breaks. So yeah, it sounds really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to giving Judy Bolton mysteries a try as well. I just made a few notes on a piece of paper here about some other books that might fit the theme of this vlog. One book is Death at La Fenice by Donna Leon. Then there is another British library crime classics called Death on the Riviera. There is a Louise Penny Inspector Gamache mystery called A Rule Against Murder. And then what else? Oh, Ellis Peters, Cadfile, The Summer of the Danes. So quite a few. And then I was also starting to think of some TV series and movies that would fit the challenge of detectives in heat, sizzling summer mysteries. Of course, there is the TV show Death in Paradise, which is very funny, and my son and I love watching that. We go through a number of inspectors on the island where it takes place. Then, as I mentioned, #1 Ladies Detective Agency. There's also an old series which I used to absolutely love when I was younger, and it is called Heat of the Sun. And that is about a Superintendent Albert Tyburn. It's set in the 1930s in Kenya. And Tyburn is a former Scotland Yard detective who is sent to colonial Kenya to head the new criminal investigation unit, and he solves mysteries along the way. And it involves a lot of British expats who have escaped London and its environs so that they can behave badly in Kenya. And there's another character played by the actress Susanna Harker, and she plays a very sort of Beryl Markham-like character. She's an aviator. She flies a plane. She's sort of his partner in crime. She's very glamorous, and she flies in and climbs down from her plane wearing her beautiful 1930s aviator outfit with her scarves and everything. So yeah, it's really neat. And the series, of course, is not perfect. It's been criticized for lack of continuity. It's been criticized for not always being historically accurate, but it is beautifully filmed. It has a gorgeous soundtrack, and it does explore racial tensions which existed in the 1930s in Nairobi. And the crimes are committed by everyone from all walks of life. So I do highly recommend that. And there's a little, of course, bit of romance in it as well. I think that's it. Those are all the titles that I have. So if I have missed any detectives in heat, perhaps you could supply some recommendations or titles in the comments below. This has been a real blast for me to do. I just love mysteries, I love detectives, and I love all things crime and intrigue in the literary sense. So I'm sitting here with my cool iced tea. It's about 87 degrees out there right now, and we've been having thunderstorms for most of the day, and the humidity has just been so high that it's finally starting to break, and we're going to get really pelted by some severe thunderstorms this evening. So I wanted to get this filming done before that all happened. I hope you're all doing well, and please let me know what some of your favorite summertime mysteries are in the comments below, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.